Welcome to our webinar on maintaining business resilience during disruptive incidents. This is the first of a series of 8 webinars that started today, and it will go all the way to June 4. So let's first start with some housekeeping rules. Initially, all of you will be muted during the session. However, as I will be mentioning later on, and it is mentioned also here under session format, we will run this webinar for 30 minutes. Following that, we will go through the Q&A session. We hope that you'll be enjoying this. And during the Q&A session, we will try to answer as many questions as we can. It can be live or it can be through the question panel that you can see. If there will be any questions that we could not answer during the given time, please rest assured that we will reach out to you with answer to your queries or to your questions. Okay, let's start with, in fact, to discover what is ahead in this webinar series. I would like to talk about our first category, which is protect your people, your systems, your operations. And the very first webinar is the one that you are joining now, the one that you are watching now, maintaining business resilience during disruptive incidents. Later on, we will be running a webinar. It is quite relevant to this topic as well, which is more about protecting life safety, managing psychological health, safety, and well-being in the workplace, followed with some relevant international standards. And the last webinar of this first category will be about supporting vulnerable persons in an emergency. So here is the agenda for today. We have a short agenda, but quite a strong one, because I am pretty sure that we will be touching into the points that have been a long discussion points until today, relevant to business continuity management, crisis management, and you will also see some intersections of these two significant topics. And the first one will be discussing about what is business in business continuity management, another topic that had been long arguments, and in the market that we have seen there are some misunderstandings about that. The next topic will be crisis management, the indicators and differences with business continuity management. I'm pretty sure that you will be finding some interesting points that will be opening more questions that you'll have the opportunity to ask later on after we complete the first half of the webinar. All right, as always, let's start with the business continuity terms and definitions. Discussing the terms and definitions are the fundamentals to understand the logic behind the applications or implementations. So we will be discussing about these 6 significant terms. They are not only under business continuity management, they are also under the subset of other significant and relevant areas like crisis management and disaster recovery management. These being subset or not being a subset will be a topic that we will discuss on the crisis management topics of this webinar. So the first thing is event. Event is anything that happens. Like one person who is authorized to access to a folder, that's an event. And also you are driving your car from A to B, that's an event. A fire breakout is also an event. But we start categorizing them as an incident or disruption in upcoming definitions. Incident, as you see, the significant thing here is it's an unplanned event. But a very important one here is, and one of the differentiating things with crisis management is, this unplanned event does not mean it is not anticipated. So unplanned, that may result with a deviation from our quality expectations or objectives. However, incident does not necessarily mean disruption. Some of us who have been working on relevant international standards for some time, you may have realized that in 2019, with a significant new version published on ISO 22301, 2019 version, we have seen a difference between disruption, incident, and disruptive incidents. We don't necessarily use disruptive incidents anymore. We prefer to use incident and disruption. The reason is this. I would like to go with a very simple example, but I believe it will help everyone to have a better picture about it. When you are driving your car from A to B, as we mentioned, it's an event. However, if you start to hear some strange noise from the engine, that becomes an instant. But something very significant is there is no change on the speed and there is no change on the pace of driving on the same highway. So that's an incident, but not necessarily disruption. Following that the same example, disruption would mean an engine breakdown happens and you have to pull over. At that time, we will call it a disruption. An instant turned into a disruption. So following this example also, we can say that every disruption is an incident, but not every incident would mean a disruption. Now, differentiating these terminologies and using the same language within the organization will help us to have a more effective and efficient response when we face with instance, disruptions, or crisis. This is why following the language of the international standards is quite significant to also align ourselves with the rest of the world, in fact. So going through that one, emergency. Emergency is a type of a disruption or an incident that may result with or lead to an life or health threatening case. So this is why categorizing emergency under a life threatening incident or disruption will make more sense. This is why when we are preparing our business continuity plans, we can also have a separate line, a separate part for emergency situations. The reason is when people, which are the most significant resources of business continuity management, crisis or instant response management, when they are responding to a disruption, if they are under a life-threatening case, their response may not be as expected or anticipated or exercised. This is why understanding the emergency situations will also be quite significant here. It is another category, another definition that we need to link with life-threatening or health-threatening incidents and disruptions. The next one is crisis. A very important and an interesting one here, interesting discussion here is a common misunderstanding why the only international standard, requirement standard on business continuity management does not include any requirement about crisis management. There are multiple reasons for that, but I will talk about the one that is quite relevant to today's webinar. Crisis management, dear everyone, is not a subset of business continuity management. Hence, we are not expecting any requirements relevant to crisis management to be listed under the international standard on business continuity management. There is a separate standard about that, which we will discuss through the end of the first half of this webinar. The significant thing, differentiation of crisis management, dear everyone, is a crisis would be a disruption or an incident, any of these, not necessarily only a disruption, but it should be threatening the strategic objectives of the organization. Basically, a crisis situation will be threatening the existence of the organization rather than being let me call it a simple disruption that may only affect product and service delivery for a certain time. So that is another significant differentiation. But when we go through this webinar, you will also see a very helpful approach in understanding if a situation is crisis or an instant or it's simply an issue. Okay, the last one that we will discuss is the disaster recovery. Now, disaster recovery is also a commonly misunderstood phrase here. Disaster recovery does not necessarily mean a disaster breaks out and that will affect our, let's say, manufacturing industry, and we will not able to source the raw materials in car automotive production. So that is something that we can call a disaster recovery situation. This is not the case, dear everyone. As you see here, disaster recovery is solely about disruptions or instance on ICT, information and communication technologies. So when we are talking about disaster recovery plans, we are basically talking about the plans that will help us to resume our ICT infrastructure, not any others. That's another significant thing to know and to embed within our organization's language. Okay, so here we are. about the first topic to discuss what is the business in business continuity. Now, I would like to start an example that will continue from the disaster recovery example, because this is something that we have been reached out or we have been asked individually as an organization by different clients all around the world. Now, the scenario is, and again, an automotive production organization had a disruption on their IT systems. And in order to not to face with that disruption, they want to implement a management system. And the right address here is definitely implementing a business continuity management system. Now, when we are reaching to organization certification bodies to ask for being certified against ISO 22301, but for their ICT infrastructure, ICT environment only, for an automotive production company, the answer that they will be receiving will be no. And the main reason is these automotive production organizations, products and services are not ICT products and services. It is not like other organizations out there who are delivering ICT services to third parties. These organizations' reason of existence, products and services are automotive production. This is why business for them is not ICT. That's a very significant differentiation on business continuity management, dear everyone. Basically, business continuity management system cannot only be applied to non-products and services of an organization, like supporting process of an organization, like their HR, as commonly they are supporting processes, finance, facilities management, or procurement. So this is why understanding the business here is quite significant. So we have these three scenarios here to discuss about if this is a business disruption or not. The first one is a truck breakdown in a logistics organization which does not have direct impact on delivery of goods. A truck is a significant resource for logistics organization, but it does not have a significant impact or any impact on delivery of goods. So this case cannot be considered as a business disruption. The next one is a cyber attack on a banking institutions. Now, a very significant point here. A bank is not delivering ICT services or cyber security services, but they are using them. So that's an enabling process for them. However, when we read rest of the scenario, core payment system causes a disruption, preventing customers from processing transactions and accessing funds for several hours. So we see that a cyber attack incident resulted with a significant impact on the capability of this organization to continue delivery of their products and or services. So this case is definitely can be considered as a business disruption. The last scenario here, a minor IT glitch in an e-commerce company briefly slows down the internal reporting dashboard, but customer-facing systems and order processing continue without any impact. Now, this case, I will leave it for a few seconds for you to have an answer. If it is a business disruption or not, it is not a business disruption, as only their internal processes are affected, and these processes did not cause any disruption to the delivery of products and services. It is not a business disruption. So when we are implementing our business continuity management system, this is the thing that we need to consider if there is any impact on products and services. Now, before we go further, as you see, we have a poll question that we will ask your participation, please. I will wait for around 45 seconds, then we will move further. I also see the answers are coming. That is great to understand the approach of our participants to this webinar. Okay, that's great. 47%, like half of our attendees today, they answered this. We have a formal documented management plan in place. I love that because the next slice that you will be hearing, what are the things that we may have done correctly, wrongly, or if there are any misunderstandings. Like I said, these are the most discussed areas, the ones that we produce arguments about them. You will be seeing it on the upcoming ones. All right. So, like half of our attendees here will be very familiar with that, the engine of business continuity management. What is happening there? First of all, we need a globally recognized framework to support initially prevention. That's the main goal. If we cannot prevent a disruption, reduction of the impact. That consists our engine of our business continuity management. And then the disruptions that cannot always be prevented, we need to manage them through a structured approach to minimize their impact. So preventive is the major one, but then in this internationally recognized framework, we are looking for the ways of mitigating it. So what is this engine? What does it consist of? Here are the 4 different levels that are interrelated between them of this engine. Risk management, business continuity risk management, business impact analysis. A common misunderstanding here, a common misperception also I can say. This one shall come before the other one. Some organizations say, first we implement business impact analysis, BIA, then we implement risk management. Another organization says, or the same people, or the people in the same organization also have this debate as well. No, we first need to implement risk management, then comes business impact analysis. Dear everyone, there is no mandate in the order of implementing risk management and business impact analysis. The reason is there is no input-output relation between them. They may influence each other, not should, not shall, but they don't have to use the outputs of another one before they are initiated. So there is no input-output relation between BIA and risk assessment. Any of these can start first, then the other may come as per your resources, or you can even implement them simultaneously at the same time. But these two will feed into business continuity strategies and solutions. Business continuity strategies will help us to have a baseline for our business continuity plans. Business continuity strategies, dear everyone, are in simple words, the risk treatment controls. So the risks that we have identified here at the initial stage, we can call this as risk assessment. They will need controls to be implemented. These controls will be later on called our strategies. In order to implement these strategies, we will be producing business continuity plans, step by step, quite a detailed approach on how we can achieve this strategy for different conditions, for different risks that are identified. And later on, of course, we will be exercising and or testing our business continuity plans. This is the engine. This is the main part of business continuity management, dear everyone. And they have a sequence and order between them together like that, but not risk management and business impact analysis. Okay, that was a significant one. Now let's move to crisis management. What is the relation of crisis management with business continuity management? Is it a subset of business continuity management, right? One of the significant questions. And what is the relation between business continuity plan and crisis management plans? And why business continuity plan is not sufficient for us? Why do we need to generate separately crisis management plans? Dear everyone, we will be discussing those 3 topics here. These are the most discussed areas, and I believe that will be another significant part of this webinar and hopefully beneficial part of this webinar. There is a thin line between disruption and crisis. We first need to start with identifying what is a disruption for us, or what's an instance for us, and what is crisis. But how? Let's see. Using international standards, of course. The significant differences between business continuity plan and crisis management plan. So they are not the same. Isn't a crisis management plan a business continuity plan as well? No, it is not. We will discuss about that as well. And why do we need to train our people, especially our CMT, the crisis management team, in order to be ready for a crisis? What is the importance of that? And what are the significant areas we need to focus in our training? We will be discussing this one as well in upcoming 10 minutes. Then, as we mentioned, we will move to the session for Q&A. Okay. Personally, I love this diagram. As you can see here, that's a significant note. This diagram is adapted from ISO 22361, the first and the only international standard on crisis management. It's a guideline standard, which is published in 2022. As some of us, as half of the attendees here are familiar with business continuity management quite well, the ISO 22301 standard business continuity management system was published in 2012, the first edition, and 10 years later, we had the first international standard on 22361. Even though we had a British standard published from us from BSI, BS 11200, we did not have an international standard from ISO on crisis management until 2022. So, dear everyone, this takes us to the question that we asked at the very beginning. How we can differentiate a crisis than incident. We need to do the diagnosis quite well. If we don't do the right diagnosis, we will implement wrong treatment. Wrong treatment, as we know, may lead to losing the patient while we are trying to say that. And some of us may know the roots of the word crisis in fact, comes from a Greek word. It means the decision-making point in treating to a patient. So it is quite relevant. This is why this thin line between an incident or a disruption, business continuity disruption, and crisis is quite significant. As per ISO 22361, we have multiple parameters that we can use together and develop a methodology, like frequency. As you see here, if the frequency is low, this is a strong indicator the case ahead of us can be a crisis. The response level, if it requires a strategic response level rather than operational or maybe tactical, it might be a crisis. If the complexity, uncertainty, and pressure is extraordinary, it can be a crisis. And the impact is relevant to existence of the organization rather than a simple disruption on a supporting process. If it is existential, then it might be an indicator for crisis. Of course, organizations have their own methodologies how to use these different parameters, but this is an amazing starting point from this guideline standard to help us differentiate between incident and crisis, so we can push the right button. All right, another topic, one of those three discussions, the second one here. So what is the difference between a business continuity plan and crisis management plan? Dear everyone, we need to first start from here. Crisis management is not a subset of business continuity management. They definitely have quite a huge intersecting area. However, crisis management cannot be taken under business continuity management, or definitely vice versa. These are two different approaches to be implemented. Now, crisis management plan and business continuity plan, when we see the differences between them, we will also have a better idea about why do we need to differentiate them, why we cannot just take them as a subset under each other. Level of detail. Business continuity plans prepared in a detail. We call it like speaking to a child, speaking to a kid. We don't have any assumptions there. This person has been working in this department for the last 15 years. So she knows how to act when a disruption happens. Under pressure, the way that we are reacting may change. Our characters may change. Our level of knowledge may change. So this is why we are explaining in a detail, like you need to stand up, go to door. You need to pull the door to yourself, not push it. Even I have opened this door thousands of times under pressure, especially if it is a life-threatening event, like an emergency situation, the cases might be different. But crisis management plans, as opposed to, they are prepared in a quite generic way because it is an extraordinary situation, because there are high uncertainties there, because the expectation of a crisis to happen is quite low. We cannot always come up with crisis scenarios. We need to keep it generic. We basically have a framework that we fill in it during a crisis. But business continuity plans, they are so well prepared. Before the disruption happens, we know step by step what needs to be done. That's a significant difference. The purpose, business continuity plans are keeping more at an operational and tactical level. Can we keep the business running? But crisis management plans, before business, we can stop the business there, but can we survive from that? Are we in control of the situation? We stop the business. In some cases, nobody will be asking about the situation of the business. Can we keep our existence after that crisis? It's that much critical. Business continuity plans would accept a certain time frame for the downtime of business, but then we need to make them up and running. As we all know, these are called recovery time objectives. But crisis management plans may start even beyond MTPD, maximum tolerable period of disruptions. Level of response, another significant one. Business continuity plans generally, dear everyone, we cannot say for all cases. There may be business continuity plans that may require a strategic level of response. There may be. But in general cases, they can be handled, managed in operation level by departments, process owners. But crisis management always requires a strategic level response, always. So these are three significant differences between a business continuity plan and crisis management plan. So we have another poll before we move further. Again, kindly asking for your inputs. They are quite helpful for us. Okay, the poll question here is, when you think about your organization, which area feels most developed? A great and simple maturity assessment. Okay. So far, business continuity plans are considered as more developed over crisis management. But we also have a good amount of attendees, with 32% currently, say that both are well developed. That's great. Again, it is minority, in fact, but that is amazing to have a focus for crisis management as well. Dear everyone, before we proceed, both crisis management and business continuity management, they have lessons to learn from each other. Like, even you may not be anticipating, of course, we never know when it will happen, but you may not be anticipating a crisis to happen in upcoming 2 decades. Or you may not feel like the effort is worth to develop a crisis management structure. When you develop a crisis management structure, even you will not be using for upcoming, as I mentioned, 2-3 decades, this structure teaches business continuity management to be more mature as well. So just only from this perspective, they have benefits to each other. And the last topic before we go to our Q&A session, training is quite significant, definitely for business continuity management teams as well. But for crisis management team, there are a few significant areas that we need to train them. And these areas are generally underestimated, or they are considered, they are assumed as, this is not something that we can gain through training. A very significant one, these two, dear everyone. Operating under pressure, improved decision making under pressure again. Decision making is sitting in the heart of crisis management. Of course, it initially comes from our top management, from the strategic level. But is it something that we can have as a natural skill, or is it something that can be learned? The answer is, it can be learned, and there are different methodologies for that. Like the very famous one is PMI methodology, plus, minus, and interesting methodology. Of course, the decision trees, as you may know, and there are many other ones that we can learn. In our training courses. This is one of the topics that we discuss, and this is one of the most interesting topics: how to learn decision making under pressure. Before the crisis hits, we need to clarify roles and responsibilities. Dear everyone, not all the time crisis management teams are led by top management. Generally, the rule is keeping top management away from the battle zone. This is a methodology of thousands of years that's applied, right? This is why crisis management teams can be led by a non-senior person, a non-executive person. Anyone from the operations team can step in. Of course, this is something determined beforehand to be the leader in crisis management. There are a few more skills that we can discuss in a larger time that we need to see. This is why we can build our own crisis management team with the necessary features, and they are trained on this. So we can again train them for effective communication and coordination. The call tree exercises are extremely important and beneficial for such cases. A very easy ones, easy win ones, quite efficient. In a very short time we can do that, but it will help us to have effective communication and coordination. Increase situational awareness. Dear everyone, when you go through ISO 22361 standard, the crisis management guidelines standard, you will see almost everywhere situational awareness. It is the starting point to make decisions in crisis management, as they cannot be well structured like business continuity management or business continuity plans. This is why every data that we receive for situational awareness will help the crisis management team and the strategic level to make informed decisions. Strengthen leadership capability. That will help us through the training. So there are many training courses that are developed, designed specifically for leaders in a shorter time to understand the steps that we may go through. Some of them supported by some scenarios. Improve response speed. Maybe more important in crisis management, the response speed, than the business continuity management. The main reason is, if we recall what we just discussed, in crisis management, we are talking about our existence. In business continuity management, we are talking about how fast we can resume the delivery of our products and services. So there is a huge difference. So every second, every minute, every day counts in crisis management for our existence. So speed relatively becomes more significant here. Learning from scenarios, definitely from other organizations, other parts of the world. These can be part of the training as well. And definitely, crisis response is a collective response. We can embed a crisis-ready culture. Organizations who did that during this global crisis that we had recently, almost recently, COVID-19, they were well prepared and less panic, and they were having more instilled confidence from their employees compared to other organizations which doesn't have this culture. Okay, so this was a quick explanation. I hope that we could highlight some significant areas of business continuity management and crisis management. We opened some question marks there. If that is the case, that was a helpful one. Before we go to the Q&A session, we have one last poll question to go through. We kindly ask your support in that one as well. Ask you your inputs on this. Following that, we will move to our Q&A session. Okay, the question here is, what will be most useful for you as a next step? Okay. A great one. Majority of us said, learning more about the international standards like 22301 and beyond. Dear everyone, there is a long list of standards under Security and Resilience Technical Committee who developed and published ISO 22301. 22361 is one of them. We have guidelines for mass evacuation. We have guidelines for color-coded alerts. We have guidelines for vulnerable persons. And the good news is, in upcoming webinars, in the upcoming 7 webinars, you will be able to hear significant information from these international standards. So you will be able to discover them as well in upcoming uh, webinars. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So here we are, dear everyone, at Q&A session. Um, I'm ready to support in any way I can to answer any queries. Like I mentioned, these can be live questions or these can be the questions that we can see on the panel. In fact, I can see a few questions here. Let me quickly see that. Okay. Aisha, great to have you here. I hope that you handled the audio issue. Okay. All right, we have one question here, which is relevant to, let me read for everyone. What is the most effective way to align crisis management, business continuity, and instant response without creating silos? Great question, amazing one, and a big one also. Dear everyone, definitely the starting point will be the frameworks, internationally recognized frameworks. Now, those three topics, if I remind you what is asked in the question, crisis management, business continuity management, and instant response. We have separate ISO standards for that. Business continuity management as the most famous one, 22301. Crisis management, we just had a very brief discussion about that, ISO 22361. And we have a standard for instant response, which is ISO 22320. Now, these three standards have a relation between each other. They can be implemented as standalone, or they can be implemented as an integrated one. This is why the beginning point is the bringing those three standards in front of the table. The other thing is, in order to reduce the duplications of the work that we are having, for example, rather than having only a business continuity policy, you can have business continuity crisis and instant response policy in a single document. This is one of the examples. Or you can use the same risk assessment approach used for business continuity management for crisis and instant response management. But we also need to know that there are nuances, there are differences between them as well. A very significant point here is not taking these three approaches under an umbrella, which is generally business continuity management, a common mistake. Yes, we need to identify the intersecting areas, but we will not be taking them as a subset of each other. So this is why you may take business continuity management as a main approach, but you can take crisis management and instant response as side approach that all these three approaches are supporting each other. I believe that's a great way to start with. Okay. So yeah, we have another great question. Is there a training program for organization covering all topics discussed? Yes, we have at BSI. In fact, we have quite a comprehensive and a large training program portfolio that brings all of them together. One of them, I can say that we have business continuity management masterclass training. We have crisis management lead implementer. That's a 5 days program. We have implementation training for instant response ISO 22320. But definitely, my colleagues here are also supporting organizations with some tailor-made approach to align these training courses, the number of days according to their expectations. Thank you very much for this question. Okay, there is another one. How can we ensure our business continuity plans actually work in real life disruptions rather than just on paper? Yes, that's the big question, right? Dear everyone, definitely the last step of this engine that we have seen, the 4 steps of engine, the last step, which is about exercising and testing. That's a very significant one. But here, I would like to recommend another guideline standard, which is not quite well known. ISO 22398. This is a guideline for exercising and testing. This standard talks about multiple different methodologies for exercising, from desktop to a full exercise, for example. So, as per your organization's context, you may prefer a tabletop exercise for some time But you may also start to consider at a certain time, why don't we move to a more effective approach from a more efficient one, like a full exercise? Of course, you need to consider the risks of that as per the context of your organization. But being aware being aware of and using different methodologies for exercising and testing will be highly beneficial for the organizations to see if business continuity plans on the paper are actually working or will be working when we face with a disruption. Exercising and testing is the fundamental way to see these business continuity plans and all the effort invested into it are helpful. Thank you. That was another great one. Okay, we are having some tough questions here because I believe we started this webinar with some interesting discussion points. Okay, there is another one. Let me quickly read. Okay, I will leave that question. Thank you very much. The question is about compliance audits against NCMA requirements. I will leave that question to our subject matter experts. They will come back to you, dear Sarat. But thank you very much for the question. That's recorded. Okay, there are many of them here. I would like to go through one by one, and I would like to also build the relevance between them. Okay, another one, let me read it loud. How do we balance speed of decision making during a disruption with proper governance and risk control? Okay, that's apparently a question that considered a lot on it. Dear everyone, this is the famous balance of efficiency and effectiveness. Now, if we take our time, conduct a proper risk assessment, and I would like to answer that question in the context of crisis management, if you allow me. So if we take our time, conduct a proper risk assessment, spending time on that, identifying all relevant threats along with vulnerabilities, and doing a proper risk analysis to see the level of risk, that will help us to have a better, or the ISO language calls it, informed decision making. But this will present a different risk here. Time is the enemy during a disruption, but especially during a crisis situation, right? So if we take our time, we will have a better decision making, but the circumstances may change so fast, this decision may have no meaning for us. This is why, again, starting with exercising, dear everyone, again, learning to make decisions under pressure. And also, that's very significant in the context of crisis, not business continuity management. Learning to make decisions when the picture is not quite clear. Again, decision making under pressure. An ability that we can gain through training and exercising that will help us to make informed decisions, mostly during a crisis situation. So this is why crisis and business continuity management can be taught like a more reactive, proactive approach. Business continuity would be more proactive. Crisis might be more reactive in that case. Dear everyone, crisis situations, as we don't know, as we cannot anticipate the exact scenario, may require making decisions in darkness. Whereas business continuity management presents us the opportunity to be quite well prepared. Take your time for risk management. Go and review your risk management multiple times. Prepare a business continuity plan that will tell the teams, individuals as well, step by step, what needs to be done almost like every second. We have this opportunity in business continuity management. So your decisions are already made in advance in disruption cases under business continuity management context. But when it comes to crisis management, your decisions are not made in advance. They are expected to be done on the spot. So you don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to spend time in risk management. As we all know, as it has been highlighted multiple times in a significant guideline standard, ISO 31000, risk management and decision making has a close connection. Decision making is supported or is an output of a risk management. In crisis situation, risk management is not a structured, systematic way. It is here. In business continuity management, we can use the structured way of risk management as it is done in advance. So this alone, this example shows how different they can be. I mean, crisis management and business continuity management. Thank you very much for this question. That was a mind-blowing one, honestly. Thank you. Okay. Great, great. Another great question. Which management system standard has a strong alignment with ISO 13485 for maintaining business resilience during disruptive instance? Thank you very much, Aisha, for that one. For those who are not very familiar, ISO 13485 is the requirement standard for medical devices, dear everyone. And definitely, as you would expect, managing disruptions instance quite a significant topics for medical device requirements. Um, the one that I would be recommending, the most relevant one, of course, we need to also consider the context of the organization, but at a first glance, is ISO 22320, the instant response, instant management standard, the guideline standard. That will be most relevant to that. However, as we consider medical devices, life safety, health and safety, I would like to say a few words here. ISO 22301, this requirement standard, clearly and strongly highlights this. Life safety is the first priority, not the products and services, aka the business, but life safety. So this is why any business continuity management standard would have, we need to bring these experts together, right? Close connection with 13485, ISO 13485 standard as well. Other than this, we have a standard that uh, you will able to have the webinar on 11th of May. It will be about vulnerable people, vulnerable persons during disruptions. These people can be people at hospitals, for example, the patients in the hospitals, which can also, we can have a bridge, dear Aisha, between 13485 standard and the security and resilience standard. Great question again. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm checking any other questions. In fact, these are the ones that are really, really significant ones, the ones that are touching to the right points, even for an organization who is mature for business continuity management. But these are all the questions that I could see for now. Okay. There is also a communication. Okay. All right. Dear everyone, thank you very much. These are all the ones that we received. If there are any questions that may come afterwards, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we will be more than happy to reply these questions or answer your queries. We have noted down also a few queries which are not coming as a question about the webinar. My colleagues will definitely come back to you on that one. Thank you very much for attending this first webinar of a long series of 8 webinars that started today and will continue until June 4. This was the first one. We will have 7 more webinars. The next one will be May 7 and the other one will be May 11. I kindly ask you for your attendance to that one. It will be quite a enjoyable webinar, and I'm pretty sure you will be discovering some interesting areas in that one. Thank you very much on behalf of BSI and looking forward to have you in upcoming webinars.